The following is a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club.
You're live.
Hello everyone, I'm Grandmaster Denes Boros, and we're back with our podcast show, where we talk with prominent personalities and chess streamers. Our today's guest is a unique one. Some call him the Bob Ross of chess. Others, which is more of like a self-proclaimed name, a pawn grubber. And I'm pleased to introduce you, Yasser Seirawan. Good to have you.
A pleasure to be with you. Hello, everyone. I got roped into this because it just so happened that the Grand Chess Tour started from St. Louis, and we were doing commentary until the Bucharest tournament ended. And, well, you know, nature abhors a vacuum. And since we have a few days before the Paris Grand Chess Tour started, explains why I'm here. Nice to be with you.
Yeah, so just introducing this show, usually we talk about careers, stories, sometimes streams, but as a chess personality, you have a bigger track record playing champions.
Yes.
And not the viewers.
That
Although
is
I'm
true.
pretty sure you played viewers.
Oh, yes. No, I've hosted a couple of streams in my time, for sure. Just a quick, brief background. I'll try to make it as brief as I can. I started chess in 1972. I was caught up in the whole Bobby Fischer boom against Boris Spassky. My family had moved from Virginia Beach, Virginia to Seattle, Washington in the summer of '72. And the whole world seemed to be chess-minded. And growing up in Seattle, we say in Seattle we don't tan, we rust. You know, we play a lot indoors. And chess was like perfectly, at the time, I was 12, and Bobby Fischer was this rather larger-than-life character. And I learned the game of chess, and I was very, very fortunate. I fell into a group of chess friends, all who were older than I, and we just absolutely adored Bughouse, what we called Siamese chess in the Northwest. Siamese chess, which makes more sense than Bughouse.
Yeah,
Bughouse
Bughouse.
I don't know.
We don't even call it Bughouse in any other country.
Exactly. So Siamese chess, and that was just so much fun playing as a member of a team. I was getting killed, of course, because I was just very, very, very weak. I was a beginning player. But it really bit my imagination, if you will. And I started playing chess, and like somehow in, I want to say the winter of '72 is like my first tournament, and I started with 3 losses. And it was one of those weekend Swiss tournaments where you play 3 games on Saturday, 2 games on Friday. Today, it's on Sunday, pardon me. Today, it's just hard for me to imagine. How could I play 3 games in one day? And the next day too, right? Yeah. Like it's crazy. So I lose my 3 games on Saturday, and I win the 2 games on Sunday, which was pretty cool, right? My first tournament games. And I won a trophy, which was for the best player under 16 years of age. Not bad.
That's pretty good.
Much later, I was to discover that I was the only player under 16 years of age. And regardless of how I had done, I was going to get the trophy. Anyway, I got the trophy, and I come home. And my family's all in the kitchen because, you know, like that's the place to go, you know, like that's where the food is, you know. So everybody's milling around, and they're all whispering to themselves because they know I lost my first 3 games. And how did he do? What's he looking like? Is he happy? So I got the trophy behind my back, and I walk through the doorway, and right above the doorway we have one of those cheap plastic clocks. You know, you always look at it and you see the time.
It goes tick tock, tick tock.
No, it doesn't.
No,
It was somehow it was a silent one.
A silent one.
Yeah, it was really, really nicely silent. So I walk through, and The clock exactly at that moment decides to fall down, hit me on the head, falls to the ground, and shatters, breaks. And everybody laughs because my mother says, "Oh my God, he must have won. His ego's so big he can't get through the door." Which is rather insightful. I mean, I still don't understand how the clock fell.
This feels like a Jungian story. Like the timing was just right for the moment.
It's terrible. It's terrible. And that was my kind of my start in the world of chess. I got a 1200, maybe it was 1100 Northwest chess rating, my first rating, and I'm sure I was way overrated at that. I think the two players I played on Sunday must have been exhausted from their Saturday games. Anyway, what was remarkable, and I really mean to say I was proud of it at the time. Now I don't even talk about it. I mean, not at all. I got my third and final Grandmaster norm at the age of 19.
Wow,
years
that's very fast.
and 10 months. 19 years and 10 months. Which was something like 7 years after I was introduced to the game of chess. So in 7 years I became a Grandmaster. Yeah. And you know, in those days, it wasn't like you had a Google
you
search.
have much less tournaments in those times, right?
Oh, yes.
Like,
Yes.
Now you just click and you're in a tournament.
Exactly. At
that time, how often did you have a tournament?
No. Grandmaster norms were just like never.
Never.
You just never got them. It was just, I played like one tournament in the Louis Statham tournament in Lone Pine, California. Those were the norm tournaments. Maybe there was a New York Open, but it was very, 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 very rare. Anyway, the point was that I couldn't do a Google search and find out who was the youngest. We all knew the youngest. Like there was a joke. You're not even going to talk about Bobby Fischer because that record would never, ever, ever be broken. A Grandmaster of 15. Come on. I mean, it's absurd.
Yeah, it's absurd.
Totally absurd. So I was a Grandmaster at like 19 years and 10 months, and I decided to look it up. But again, you couldn't do a Google search. Yeah. It wasn't like there was, go to the 2700.com and find out.
Yeah, you could do that in a second.
FIDE. I mean, if you wrote a letter to FIDE, I mean, somebody maybe would
They'll answer
receive
you maybe
the letter.
2 years.
Yeah, so it was really, really hard, but I broke it down, and I discovered, much to my surprise, that at the time that Bobby Fischer got his Grandmaster title, the youngest previous to him was a gentleman by the name of Boris Spassky. So Spassky had been the youngest Grandmaster ever until Bobby Fischer came along.
Yeah, and that kind of rings a bell because there's like a famous game between Korchnoi and Spassky in the Löwenfisch where like Spassky blunders away a piece.
Okay.
And he was like 16 then. And
right.
Korchnoi just saying, you'll never be anybody.
Yeah, joke.
And then he mans up, so to say. I guess that's what Korchnoi would use.
Yeah.
And I guess that becomes the Grandmaster.
Right. The third youngest Grandmaster after Fischer, after Spassky, was a very unique individual from Brazil. His name was Henrique Mecking.
Oh, Mecking, yes.
Mecking. He was the greatest player to come out of South America, if you don't think about
and
Cuba.
Probably the most religious.
Exactly.
To that point in the 70s and 80s.
And number 4 was moi.
Ah.
So I was like, hey man, I like they're doing pretty good. I go around the world.
How did you get the information?
I really had to rely upon friends like John Donaldson. This is researcher supreme. Like John is just amazing.
He's well known for that, even today.
And there were people at the USCF that had some kind of records. I'm not talking about ARPAD, ELO. I just mean the ratings directors and stuff like that. I managed, okay. And so there I was thinking I was really good. And now today, like they're trying to break Karyakin's record at 12 years. like Who knew that Judith was going to beat Bobby's record and so many beat Bobby's record? But it was a completely different time because, again, like when I played in these tournaments to get Grandmaster's norms, they simply weren't possible. And it was only like when I started going into Europe and playing in round-robin events and doing some things like that, that I got it. But anyway, so that was kind of a brief history. I became a Grandmaster, encouraged me to, propelled me onwards. It was like the strangest thing. It was a kind of a catch-22. I wanted to become a Grandmaster. Great. But organizers were only interested in inviting you if you were a Grandmaster.
Ah, yes.
Or if you had like a super high rating. So, how do I become a Grandmaster if I don't have the norms?
If you don't mind
Please.
asking, so you played in the World Junior Championships, and I'm
That's right.
wondering how in
1979.
1979 how important that was to you.
Crucial. It was absolutely vital. So in 1978, it was my first outing in Graz, Austria. My first outing in the World Junior Championship. I got crushed. I mean, there were Artur Yusupov and all of these. It was great. I was playing in front of my U.S. flag, and there was the Soviet flag. And I'm like looking, I'm supposed to be the angel, and my opponent's supposed to be the devil. He's a really nice guy. We play football on the off day. It's like, what? My first foray into international events and the World Junior Championship was a disaster. Well, for me, I had high expectations. I didn't fulfill them. A year later, I was back, and I went to Norway.
Skiing.
Skien, Norway. And the most, like, this was like a tournament, one of the most strangest, incredible, amazing events ever. We actually played, the organizer was a fellow by the name of Arnold Eikram. And Mr. Eikram, Arnie, he was the Mr. Norway. I mean, if it wasn't for Arnie Eikram, there would be no Norwegian chess. None. The guy did everything, and he organized events, he sponsored events, he got people to come to those events, including Skien. We played at a women's college, a women's university, that was supposed to be empty. But it wasn't.
It wasn't?
It was like a lot of the ladies who were studying at the college, the university, stayed over for their summer semester or whatever. And here we were, like a group of like 100 junior players from around the world being tormented by these Norwegian collegiate girls who would literally, that we had to walk up the stairs, and it was like walking through, like we'd be grabbed and groped as we ascended the stairs. It was amazing.
All that hazing
I
going
know.
on.
I tell you, it was rough. I tell you. I mean, my goodness. Today, there's politically incorrect type of
that
things
is
would never-
very politically incorrect
never,
behavior.
Terribly. Amazing thing happened. 10 and a half out of 13, I was the gold medal winner ahead of Yusupov, Dolmatov,
And I checked.
Yusupov, Chernin, sorry, and Predrag Nikolic,
Yeah.
and a number of other.
Chernin was unrated. He
Yeah.
has no rating. Now, of course, if you know, he is a coach, a well-known coach. I think Coach Fabiano, too.
Yes.
And also
Many,
part of
many
Team
players,
Kasparov.
Yeah, many players. And literally, today, if you win the World Junior Champion, it's not a norm. They give you the title.
Yeah.
Okay. In those days, it wasn't a norm. That wasn't one of my norms. But thanks to winning the World Junior Championship, I got an invitation to Vikonsay.
Oh. So it was actually a ticket.
Absolutely. And that World Junior Championship, I was on sabbatical. I was like, I had graduated a year early from high school with the intention of going to the University of Washington in Seattle. And I still remember I filled out the form and I was doing all the things that I was supposed to do. And $2,570 was going to be tuition for the trimester. $2,570, pardon me, $2,570. And somewhere I'm writing out the form, I get an inspiration. It comes into my mind. I don't know why. I say to the man, by the way, I am the champion of Washington State in chess. He said, really? Yeah. The champion of Washington, he didn't react in that kind of positive manner that I really wanted. So I had to emphasize the point. For all ages, I am the best chess player in the whole of Washington State. He said, that's amazing. I didn't know. That and $2,570 will get you into the university. Now, it's like, my gosh, Webster University and other universities really were the pioneers, but you can get full scholarships to go and play in university chess competitions. In my day, it didn't get you a 5% discount, not even a family discount. It was pretty bad.
I mean, that's why Fischer is so important, because he said, no, value as players. Talking about Fischer for a second.
Please.
When you were growing up and got interested in chess, did you recall the games you looked at? Do you remember like the Bishop Sacrifice, or did you look at that at the time?
Yeah, I did. I followed it, and then of course much later, like the 60 Memorable Games kind of became a bit of a Bible for me. I mean, I got a copy. This copy looks so chewed up. It looks like a dog. Like it's marked up, everything. It looked like I dropped it in the bathtub, and I must have read it in the bath. And anyway, it's a really, really messed up copy of 60 Memorable Games, but it was one of those books, very much like Michael Tall's 1960 World Championship match book, where I read it as maybe a class player, got some interesting insights from it, read it as maybe an expert, and thought I was reading it for the first time. Like, wow, this is just an amazing book, and like it's full of all of this chess knowledge that was extraordinary to me. Then I read it maybe as a chess master, 2200, and I was reading it for the first time. In other words, I read the book 5, 6, 7 times at various moments in my life, and each time seemed to have felt like I've learned more from it now than I ever did before. So it was like, again, for me, that book by Michael Tall, his 1960 World Championship match book, is the greatest book ever, full stop, end of story. And 60 Memorable Games is right there as number 2. And those two books can be read, and you learn, you pick up so much as you get better and better. It was an extraordinary phenomenon. Bobby Fischer. Like, for me, I think I was born at the best of times and at the worst of times, in the sense that I joined this Bobby Fischer parade, and I was going places and doing wonderful things and becoming a chess grandmaster. And it is impossible to explain what Bobby's position in the world of chess was. His significance was greater than, let's say, a kind of a combination of Magnus Carlsen and Garry Kasparov combined. And for an American audience, it was through the roof. So there I was, joining this great parade of would-be players and would-be stars, and we were going to conquer the world. We were going to be the next great sportsmen, mind masters. We were going to be called the mind masters. We're going to take over the world, and we're all going to become multimillionaires. Forget about the NBA, forget about the NFL, forget about golf and tennis. Chess
is going to be the big deal.
Going to be the big deal, make us all kajillions and kajillions of dollars. So it wasn't just me. I mean, there were others, Nick DeFermi and John Fedorowicz, Larry Christensen. You can just go on the list of names of people within my age group.
Joel Benjamin.
Joel Benjamin. And we were all deeply inspired. 3 years later, in 1975, 3 years after winning the World Chess Championship, Bobby doesn't play a single game of chess at all, and like disappears. So you can all imagine marching down Main Street, for the parade, and suddenly the parade and the band leader just disappear. Like, well, what are we doing? And in those 70s, in those years of the 70s and the early 80s, like the world of chess was rife with rumors. What was Bobby doing? He was preparing to beat Anatoly Karpov. He was doing this. He was doing that. He had refused $1 million from Volkswagen. He had refused $1 million in commercial advertisements from Johnson & Johnson shampoo. And he had done these things and those things, and he refused all of this money. And we were all confused. So it was like the best of time and the worst of time. If he had played that match in 1975 against Anatoly Karpov, I beg your pardon, so it would have been just a totally different world.
Yeah. And it's interesting because in some ways we have a similar time. We've got the Queen's Gambit, some online boom happening.
Yeah, brilliant. It's wonderful,
like
marvelous.
Twitch, everything, YouTube exploding.
Let's go. I encourage it.
I do think that it does rhyme to that Fischer era boom.
Yeah. Well, again, the Queen's Gambit, this kind of fictitious series that became very popular, helped popularize chess. But there's no way you can take this kind of fictitious series and compare it to the real thing. So in other words, imagine that Star Wars, this wonderful creation from George Lucas, captures the world's imagination. And on the day that Star Wars is released, Superman appears. I mean, a genuine, real Superman. Like Star Wars is not as important as Superman. I mean, Superman, you can touch and feel Superman. And that, I was very, very, very fortunate because a lot of people ask me, who's your favorite player? Or who's the best player of all time? Who's the strongest player of all time? And I'm sitting there saying, well, I don't know what your list is, but my list would be something like Garry Kasparov, Anatoly Karpov, Bobby Fischer. Magnus is definitely getting up there, Viswanathan Anand. Now, I don't know if those guys are on your top 10, but it's kind of hard to see why not. Those guys are amazing. Well, guess what? I mean, I've been around, and I watched them develop, and I played with them, with the exception of Bobby Fischer, of course. But for me, like Garry Kasparov was just this giant of a chess player. Magnus and Karpov, and they have had their eras, and Fischer was something special. Although we were two ships, we kind of passed. I did get a chance to meet Bobby Fischer, speak with him, play chess, or rather analyze with Bobby Fischer. But at that point, he was really...
He was out there?
1 foot out the door. 1 foot out, as far as being a chess player. It was like, he's making this. It was very strange at the later stages of his life in 1992 at Sveti-Stefan, where I met and spoke with him. The rematch with Boris Spassky. I wrote a book about that, by the way, called No Regrets. And the book is available on eBay for like $1,800. I'm not kidding. You could look it up. It's not a joke. It's like hilarious.
Yasser, if I may, we have a question in the chat about No Regrets. Someone really wants that. Is there any chance you'll be able to put it back into print?
No.
No way?
No way. It's
not
just
even
so much too fun. It's just too much fun.
But how about podcasts? Like, what I'm usually curious about, because a lot of times people used to read books, but recently everyone is into listening to podcasts and stuff like that. Do you consider creating podcasts and such?
Well, pardon me, myself as a host of a podcast?
Meaning just reading up your book and give it as a product?
I haven't. No. The answer to your question, Dennis, would be no. But I've recently, it was a very strange period for I think everybody this last year, the last 15 months. But I recently did
Like an audiobook, yes.
a Chessable courses. So I had the series of books, the Play Winning Chess series, and I converted them to a video and audio experience along with, I want to call it the Move Trainer experience, where you're asked questions at a certain moment to test your comprehension of the material that's being presented. And I had a lot of fun doing the conversion to the Chessable, and it's a bit like an audio book. There's like, I'm not kidding, like maybe 30 hours of presentation and audio and discussion, storytelling. I can't help but fall into storytelling mode.
With an extra little psychological pressure of you repeating.
Right. Well, also, a lot of people, sadly, today, experience what I would call the database experience. So in the database experience, you learn a line, the Grunfeld, and you go boom, 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 and you get all of these database of games, and this move has been sequenced 500 times, and the result is 43.6% versus this move that was sequenced 400 times, but the result is a little bit higher, and da-da-da-da. And it's sort of like you getting all of these moves, but they're devoid of emotional content. I want to put it like that. You play in your first U.S. championship game and you come out with your new weapon that you've been really working on, the French defense, and you get crushed. I mean, just absolutely obliterated, destroyed.
Which year was this?
No, not me.
And
I'm just using
just saying
it as an
analogy.
example.
Okay.
And suddenly, all your enthusiasm that you ever had for the French defense is gone. Now, like, wait a minute, what happened? The engine says, no, man, you were doing okay. You only had a slight disadvantage. It was here where you fell off the boat. No, you're in pain. You're in pain. And so these moves that, you're just devoid of this emotional content, right? Like, whereas I was raised on a book like, for example, David Bronstein's The Struggle, right? And in that book, it's like, David explains that in this type of a position of the King's Indian, when you're white and you play the move F4, this is a liberty that, maybe temporarily, maybe on the temporary moment, you play F2, F4 as white in a King's Indian defense because it helps your rook on F1. Like, hey man, that rook gets in the game. But the bishop on G7 after the move E5 takes F4 is roaring down an open diagonal for the rest of the game. The E5 square became the rook on E8 targets the pawn on E4. And the way he describes the drawbacks of the move F4 is going to send a shiver up your spine.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not playing F4. So it's this idea that in this Chessable course, that it's one thing to sit there and just use the database. And say, this
it's
is a
not
good
enough.
move.
It's just not enough.
Yeah, there's not an emotional connection that you get when you're connecting to, an opening. You got to go through the gauntlet. You got to be tested in the fires of competition. And I remember John Fedorowicz, man. He's playing in a U.S. Junior Championship. Something goes wrong with his dragon. He kick drops his favorite dragon bug down a flight of stairs. Like, as if I've never played the dragon. I mean, it hurts. It hurts,
Yeah,
right?
it does.
Like, you can't just be
hurt.
devoid of like, oh, I should have played that. No, it hurts. So this idea of, that's one of the things that I want to say what I really do like about online is the online competition. When I was growing up, my biggest problem was finding an opponent. Nobody wanted to beat up a 13-year-old, and certainly nobody wanted to lose to a 13-year-old or a 15-year-old or whatever. Now you can play online, 724, you get your handle, and whether you like 1 minute or 3 minute or 5 minute, you can compete, and you get to try out those French defenses and the dragons and things like that. And so that's one of the reasons why I think today's generations of young players are so much stronger than I was.
Well, I really want to concur here because for a while I didn't understand why Bronstein does the things that he does or the way he teaches. And he would play some outrageously bad opening to test the young players. And I would say, as from this generation, what is he doing? This is just bad.
Right.
What is the point of this move? And then I realized he's just curious to see what is your decision-making mechanism.
Right.
He's just interested. Yes, of course, if I play the main line of the Najdorf, you'll know everything.
Right.
But if I play this terrible move against you, what are you going to do with my terrible move?
Exactly. Well, one of the things that you and not you, Denes, but the audience, you start to understand, but only when you become a really, really, really good player, you start to realize that your opponents have a comfort zone. They get into their particular tabia positions that they know inside and out. They know that they've got this fortress, they can draw it, they can do this, they can do that. They're in their comfort zones. So somebody who comes along and plays an absolutely stupid, miserable move, A2, A3 on move 6 in the Najdorf, like what? Now what are you going to do? You know, the onus is on you. You're no longer in your comfort zone. Well, David was one of those, and I want to say it I want to use this word accurately. He was a provocateur. He loved to provoke you into attacking him or into seizing the defensive to take some material and then defend. And the moment that happened, that this provocation took you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And you didn't play as well. Emanuel Lasker, world champion Emanuel Lasker, was also disparaged for purposely playing poor moves to encourage the opponent to get optimistic. You know, like before a moment ago, the guy's defending really, really well. Resoutly, he's going to make a draw. Now he's got an advantage. Now he says, aha, I'm going to punish the world champion now that I have an advantage, and overstepping. So these guys, by the way, Tigran Petrosians of the world, were provocateurs. They tried purposefully, deliberately to get you out of your comfort zone. The world champion that didn't do that was Anatoly Karpov. Anatoly Karpov was technically perfect. He played always technically well the positions. He wasn't there as black to try to win all of his games, as was Bobby Fischer. No, he just played technically incredibly well. And he wasn't the provocateur that the David Bronstein, or for that matter, Ben Larson, was.
But I guess Petrosian was close to that. Like he was, I'm taking a bit of risk. I provoke you a little bit, but I'm still in the Caro-Kann. I'm still in.
Yeah, he had his setups and his fortresses. And one of the things that Tigran did extraordinarily well, better than anybody else, within a very confined amount of space, he arranged his pieces well. Like, normally speaking, if I'm playing an amateur player and I get a big spatial advantage, I just press and squeeze them off the board. That's it. They're gone. They're just like, like an eraser. They get rubbed out. Tigran wasn't that guy. He didn't get rubbed out. I mean, he just kind of like bend, 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 snap forward. And he was really, really unique and remarkable. Now that I've introduced myself, I really want to give the audience a chance, give them the floor and let them ask away.
Yeah, they did have a question about your Immortal games. Like, we know a lot of Immortal games from Petrosian, but I'm curious, like, your Immortal game, which great player kind of influenced you?
I had many influences. So when we talk about great games in my career, sure. I mean, I played a lot. But for me, my career-defining game was my game in Skellefteå in 1989 against Garry Kasparov. And it was actually just an amazing game. And in my book, Chess Duels, which was a book about just all my games with the World Chess Champions, that game went for like 20 pages. It was just like an amazing game. So what happened is, he plays a King's Indian. I play an Averbach system with Bishop E2, which very quickly transposes into a Benoni. And I get one of the worst Benoni positions ever. Just think of like a really totally ugly Benoni position, and I got it. Now, normally, in such a situation, I just offer my opponent a draw. And I excuse myself. In this case, it was a little bit difficult, right? So the first phase of the game goes really badly. And it was the GMA tournament, the Grandmasters Association. It was the 6th and final tournament. And Karpov and Kasparov were in real dogfight for first and second. So the games that I played with them in Skellefteå were really important. By the way, I ended up tying. I believe Karpov and Kasparov tied for first. I ended up tying for third with Nigel Short and maybe Portish, I'm not sure. Anyway, so the point was, I play this game. The first part of the game goes really bad, but this is a really important tournament, the GMA. I mean, so much was riding on the outcome. We were playing in Sweden. Sweden wasn't noted for hosting really big, prestigious event, and the Swedes went out. I mean, marvelous playing hall, marvelous conditions, and the Swedish TV with these big cameras were focused on the board and stuff. Garry Kasparov in a Benoni has his knight on e5. Perfectly, like pawn on g5, pawn on h4. That knight on e5 is omnipresent. It ain't getting moved. Everything has gone his way. And he plays the move c5, c4 is black. c5, c4 is black. He doesn't just play the move c4, like play the press card. Garry takes the pawn and he twists it. I mean, he twists it like a screwdriver into the board, like somehow by twisting it like 9 times, it's going to go into the depth of the square and become a stronger move with each twist. He does that and kind of rubs a little salt into it and bam, hits the clock. And the Swedish television man is like
zooming in.
One of the worst strategic moves ever. Ever. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, this is like a 12. This is epically bad. I like a bishop. I had a dark squared bishop buried on g1 that was doing nothing.
Now it's coming alive.
Now, in a Benoni with a pawn on a5, it goes screeching down there. I have a knight on e2 that was like immobile. There's a pawn on h4, black pawn on h4, black pawn on g5, a black pawn on c5. This knight on e2 is a cripple. It can't do anything. c5, c4 opens up the d4 square. I have a rook on b1, which with the move b3 means a weakness on b7. And instantly my game goes from like very bad, like -2, I don't know, to like +1.5. Right? But it wasn't that my position went from such a change. It was, my emotion was, that move sucks. It's one of the worst moves ever. I'm going to win this game. With that thought in mind, I decided I needed to give Gary a kiss. That I get up from the board, tiptoe around the board, go kiss right on his cheek, tiptoe back, sit down, and then think about what I'm going to do. The only reason I didn't was because of the TV cameras. They were too intimidating. They were like cameras, like, ah! But it actually goes through in my mind, if I kiss my opponent, is this like against the FIDE rules for disturbing your opponent and, you know, behaving badly? I mean, like, and then I tell Gary after the game, you know, I was planning on giving you a kiss. I said I deserve it. That was but I mean, you know, like it was epic. So it went through my mind. So then, of course, you know, everything starts going my way, and I'm killing it.
Yeah.
I have these massive complications. I can sacrifice my queen for 2 minor pieces and like a super nice pass pawn, or I can sacrifice my queen for a minor piece and a rook and a super nice pass pawn, and I get myself into time trouble. I end up at a piece up and no time. And on my 40th move, I play the proverbial mistake that throws away my advantage. But it was one of those games where it was this incredibly emotional roller coaster ride where like Gary just doesn't back down. He just comes and he just throws the pieces going bang, 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 bang. And I'm like collecting and
This, I'll take this.
Yeah, face mash, and my king is trying to get to safety, and it was just, it ended up as a draw, and we analyzed the game for months afterwards on a flight from Moscow. We ended up analyzing the game. So that game for me was like a career game. I played a match. It was like, this is great. This is like, this perfectly encapsulates my career. There was a marvelous World Championship match in 1990. It was between Garry Kasparov and Anatoly Karpov. It was played in New York City as well as Lyon. During the second half of the match in Lyon, there was another match, the best of the West.
Oh.
The best of the West. So there was who was the number 3 player in the world, Jan Timman. He was the number 3 player in the world. The number 1 and number 2 are in Lyon. And Vichy hadn't really shown himself at that time as much as we now know. But the best of the West match was Jan and I. Jan took a lead in the match, and I came storming back to win the match 4.5, 1.5. Nobody noticed because there was a World Championship match going on. That got all the press, all the light, even the Dutch, writers, newspaper writers, the Hans Reys of the world. They were in Lyon.
So when are we going to get a book on that match?
There was a book on that match, not written by me, but there was a book on the match. And
who wrote it?
Some Dutch. I'm not sure. It may have been John
Vandervelde.
John Vandervelde, maybe. But okay. So, like, yeah, I mean, and you know, Jeroen Paquette at the time, he was the trainer for Jan Timman. He was his second. And in Hilversum, where the match took place, each year they used to sponsor a match. Timman played with Kasparov, he played with Portish, played with Michael Tal, he played with Yasser Seirawan. And all of those matches got great coverage except for my match with him.
Oh,
the best of the West because of the World Championship. It was hilarious. And I won a game in particular in that match, a kind of an ode to Paul Morphy, where I made the same exchange sacrifice as the opera game for tempo reasons and stuff. And it was really like fantastic match games. I won some really beautiful match games. So that for me was really, you know, like a kind of high mark, if you will. I also had, this was like hilarious, right? So I was on a flight from Hamburg, I don't know, to like Bristol, like someplace in England. not even, my mother's British, so maybe I had some reasons to go there. I'm not really even too sure where we were landing. Anyway, sit down and kind of look the guy next to me. It's Anatoly Karpov. Like in a random universe, Karpov is sitting next to me on a flight to the middle of England. Like this is like crazy, right? Ridiculous. So we just nonstop talking the whole time, and we were comparing notes on all kinds of things, really going back and forth. And I get on the topic of Grandmaster victories in a row. And I explained to him that he explains to me that he won 6 Grandmaster games in a row. 6. And I said, yeah, I had 7. And I did it on 3 occasions. He goes, yeah, but who were the 7 Grandmasters that you beat? And I said, well, Anatoly, you were one of them. Oh, okay. You, Lvovich, Hort, like dong. Oh, 7 in a row. And then we stopped each other with some laughter and said, Bobby Fischer won 20 in a row. If you include his games from the interzonal, not include the 21 game for the Pano forfeit, but then you go with the Bent Larson and Taimanov wipeouts. He won 21 Grandmaster games in a row. And we just kind of looked at each other, and that is what we said. Like, that's insane. Like, that is just, to do that, your willpower has to be on some extreme setting.
It's just like
it's like it's unbelievable.
You can't.
Like I was watching Shaq Mamidarov.
Yeah.
Shaq in the last round of the Bucharest event, in the last round, he's +3. In a draw, essentially clinches him at least a tie for first. Let's put it like that. And he just goes as fast as he can go into the draw. Never for a single second does he think, I should win this game, go +4, increase my rating, show my world championship power. And that was an exact moment when Bobby Fischer would say, yes, now I have to win because I'm in good form to begin with. I'm in really, really good form. I'm playing against an opponent, MVL. I don't care that he's a good player. He's in bad form.
And I'm in a great shape.
I'm in a great shape. So, I mean, the contrast couldn't be more stark. And yet for Shaq, he made the right decision by his understanding of chess, and 90% of the chess world agrees with him. You got to be this extreme, like, I don't even use the term fighter. I use some kind of ferocious, Tasmanian devil, to play for a win in that situation. That's Bobby.
Yeah. So I did want to come back to your game with Kasparov. As you said, Kasparov was sacrificing pawns left and right, and he said,
exchange.
"Oh, thank you. I'll take this. I'll take that.
Right.
Please, more of that one."
Yeah. Anything else you like?
And I was wondering, because you worked with Korchnoi, and I wonder if you were a disciple of Korchnoi, or you yourself already had this attitude of, I'm going to take that pawn, whatever happens, happens. Or was that rubbing off from him a little bit?
Oh, there was definitely, I learned a great deal from Viktor. My propensity to be a pawn grabber didn't completely come from Viktor, but I think in many ways he and I had a very similar attitude of being provocateurs and walking on hot coals for material advantage. We had a great deal of confidence in our own defensive abilities. So grab the loot, drag our opponents to their ultimate death. Yes, that was, we had that in common before we met. What we also had in common was this, I want to say, love, but I also want to use the word respect. We both had this great love and this great respect for the game of chess. It was like, this was something special. It has a history. You know, we have to respect the game. We have to be truthful to ourselves in the game. We have to play properly. So it wasn't like, you know, I'll just do anything I can and grab material just for the sake of material. No. You have to also play properly, and also respect your opponent, that they also have put themselves through the training and the thousands of hours and the hard work to become a great player. So respect them. So we had this love of chess, but also this respect, and that went really, really far. There was this like funny clip I saw in a trailer of a movie recently. It was like Chris Rock, you know, the guy, super muscle-bound guy, and there's this comedian, I think Kevin Hart is his name, and he's going to a class reunion, and there's The Rock. He looks like Mr. Olympus, and you know, he comes up to, he goes like, "Hey, how you doing? You know, it's great to see you. 20 years, you haven't changed, man. I love you. Who are you?" He tells The Rock tells him who he is, and he says, "My God, what's your secret? You look like Hercules." "Oh, for the last 20 years, I spent 6 hours in the gym working out every day." "Oh, that'll do it." and I always wondered about people who said, you know, like we made this mystery kind of thing, like, oh, that chess grandmaster guy, I mean, he was born a grandmaster. No. Anatoly Karpov, this Swanathan Anand, may have been the two most gifted players, talented players I've ever met in my life. And they worked incredibly hard. If those weren't the two most gifted players, then Gary was like a third. And that guy worked like a demon. I mean, he worked when, you know, like, look at his interviews. When he talks about his early matches, he played 5 matches with Karpov. But his first match, he trained for like 8 hours a day for 6 months solid. For one match. Of course, that match lasted 48 games and it never ended. I have a great story about that match. My friend Jonathan Tisdall, he went to Moscow to be the AP, maybe it was the Reuters reporter. So he was there for 6 months. And he said, "Yasser, at the end of that match, I learned Russian, I lost my girlfriend, and got kicked out of the apartment I was renting." You know, it was a pretty epic World Championship match.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of the fact that, so you had that book, 60 Memorable Games.
That I'm masticating and chewing my way through it.
My book
please.
Was probably a colleague of Tisdall's, Andras Adorjan's book. He made a Hungarian book on all of these Kasparov matches, and that's the one I chewed up. Like, it's torn apart, every page turned around, what happened there. And it's just fascinating, like...
because Andras Adorjan was the trainer to Garry Kasparov, and a clash of intellects, a clash of styles, and at a certain moment they parted, and maybe Andras wasn't exactly happy with the way that Gary treated him upon their departure, and so he kind of vented, I think, was it Kvarde? Or what was the name of the book?
So it
in
is
Hungarian.
In Hungarian, it's on Kasparov in black and white.
Okay.
But it was actually, like, I read the Hungarian version. I don't even think there is any other versions out there. He is having an honest take, but it's not at all negative.
Right.
But he says what he has to endure in those Soviet times, and he was kind of like masquerading as Tisdall's colleague. Well, not exactly Tisdall, but a journalist. But in reality, he was helping Kasparov.
Okay, so he goes to Moscow as some journalist. He gets a credential for being Hungarian, but it was just a masquerade. He was actually actually working secretly for Gary.
Yeah, and he was like, there was a back and forth going on there that, are you really doing the journalist work? And I said, yeah, I do for the Hungarian. Look.
My article was just published yesterday. Yeah.
And it's very fascinating because he does talk about what you see from Bareyev books of the psychological states that they're in. And it was fascinating to me how he describes the lethargy when things are going really bad for Team Kasparov, and when they're deciding no more Tarrasch or more Tarrasch or Grunfeld now.
Right.
And honestly, apart from that Bareyev book, I barely had a book that described human emotions.
The inner works. Yeah, and I think that that's a really important thing. Again, this emotional content in books. Like, I was really drawn to writers like David Bronstein, Michael Tal, Ben Larson, because it wasn't just good move, bad move, good move, bad move. Oh, I should play here. I didn't like the outcome. It was sort of like, okay, this move is going to cost me $10,000 in my rent money if it doesn't work out. A lot of people can relate to that, right? So I liked the stories behind the books, but you know, the really sad part for me, Dennis, is like here in the United States, maybe in Hungary, I hope it was easier for you. It was very hard to get chess books. Like literally, you know, there was the Fred Reinfelds and the Irving Chernevs. And if by luck you managed to find, you know, the 2-volume series by Alexander Alekhine or the series by Paul Carrez, or, you know, My Best Games by Bodvinik or Smyslov, if you could get those, you know, My Best Games collections, they were marvelous, marvelous, marvelous books with devoid completely of emotional content. It was sort of like, in this game I decided to play the Dutch.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Well,
that's
I mean,
terrible.
You know, and in these variations, in the Dutch, felt like Bishop E7. I mean, that was the maximum amount of verbiage, and everything else was just moves and moves and moves and moves. So a book like Andras Adorjan's, where, you know, he's really trying to share, you know, his ups and his downs and his, you know, how he feels and things like that. Those are really, really rare books. They just didn't come along. Just on that note, I just want to tell you one story. This is like a marvelous story, and I really do want you guys to ask me questions, okay? So just tell you this one quick story. It's a match, Tigran Petrosian versus Viktor Korchnoi, and these two guys hated each other's guts. I mean, the tension between them was palpable. No handshakes, nothing. Draw offers went through the arbiter, Harry Gollenbeck. And those days they had a Germans, and there was 2 Germans that Michael Steen and I, Victor's trainer, myself, were working on. And one, Victor was worse, but we hoped he could draw, and the other, he thought he was winning. Okay, Victor thought he was winning. He had a queen as white for 2 very good bishops, and a protected pass pawn on c3. No. His opponent, Petrosian, had ample compensation. He was better, was Victor, but by no means was he winning. So Petrosian took a timeout, and we spent, like, literally, I'm not joking when I say this, 24 hours to study this position, and I just put my heart and soul in this position. And after some perfunctory moves, they got to this very key moment, and I said, Victor, you have to play g4. G2, G. Victor nearly bit my head off. Don't you understand anything about chess? No way, not happening, nothing. No way, g4, forget about it, done. Just don't waste your time. We analyzed all these other variations, kept coming to a draw. Please play g4. Rook c8. Bang, 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 bang. You lose. Oh. Okay, h6. Best move. Bravo. h4. Another move. Bang, 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 bang. You lose. And this went on until he went right down. He exhausted all my analysis, came to the end, and it was a draw. It was a draw with correct play. Says, you see, your stupid move g4 draws. I go, yeah, but he has to duck and bob and weave and avoid all of these traps along the way. It's a good try. It's the best try. We go to the tournament playing hall. The first game, they play a few moves. Petrosian offers a draw. That's great. Done. Draw. Then the second adjournment, there's a 30-minute pause in between. I'm at the backstage with Viktor in his dressing room, if you will. Are you going to play g4, yes or no? I leave. I go in the darkened theater. So there I am in the darkened theater. They play the moves, they reach the position, and instantly, and I mean instantly, the guy goes g4. Korchnoi plays. So there I am in this darkened theater, which was very crowded, by the way, and want to jump out of my seat and go, yeah, baby, played my move. That's my move, everybody. Hello, it's over here. Give me some love. And I sit back down, and then I'm just kicking it. I'm so happy with myself. I just can't believe how happy with myself. And Petrosian's making all kinds of faces, and Petrosian writes down a move, and 5 minutes goes by, he changes he writes down another move, and this goes on for well beyond 20, 25 minutes, way beyond. And during these 25 minutes, something incredible happened to me that will never, ever happen to another Grandmaster, ever.
What happened?
Exactly, what happened? Can you guess what happened to me? Well, I'm about to tell you what happened to me. What happened to me was the enmity, the animosity that these two guys had for each other was visceral. I mean, I'm talking real hatred. And then I started thinking, what if the move g4 had a flaw? What if Viktor played a move he absolutely despised on sight that I convinced him to play, and his most hated rival defeated him, beat him, put him behind in the match? What? I have to commit seppuku for the honor of the family, right? Nothing less. We didn't have chess engines. We couldn't double check and say, yes, g4 is a top computer move. Maybe there is another line. No. So I sat there mortified after these 10 minutes. I couldn't breathe. Petrosian played the very first move that Korchnoi did against me in our analysis, rook c8. Viktor went bang, 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 crushed him, and won the game brilliantly. I went outside, like deep breaths, relieved, and I stood by the car as Viktor comes down the town hall steps with this boisterous crowd of cheering people who are singing something in German. I don't know what it is, but they won't let him escape. They're literally rocking him back and forth, and he gets closer and closer, and he's wearing an overcoat, and he's got the fedora, the special kind of hat, similar to yours.
Here,
And I'm holding open the door, and Korchnoi goes to go in the car. When he comes out, because I'm wearing the Cheshire cat kind of smile. He says, shut up, shut up, just shut up. Get in the car, we all went and celebrated. That was a different time, a different era in chess. And capturing that era in a book, in a podcast, and trying to explain to some 12, 14, 16-year-old who was raised on computers and smartphones. you know, what it was like to take risks and come up with novel ideas. It was no connection.
So there was a question
Please.
from the chat, and they were obviously asking about your relationship and working relationship with Korchnoi. I do want to add the first part, though. You had a game before you actually built a relationship, like a human relationship with him. What went through your brain while preparing against him? Because it must have been different.
Right. Oh, well, for sure. I mean, in those days when I played Viktor, that was the first game that we had was in 1980 in Viktor. And he was the number 2 player in the world. But in those days, with Bobby Fischer absent, you know, and Gary Kasparov was still a junior, Karpov and Korchnoi vied in 1974 in the candidates finals. They played 24 games and Viktor lost 3-2. Karpov became the challenger and won the world championship by forfeit. So that game was basically for the world championship. Then in 1978 in Baguio City in the Philippines, it was 6-5. In 1980, again, Viktor is still so strong. He's the number 2 player in the world that he would eventually win the candidates, thanks to my help, and carry him to his 1981 World Championship match in Murano, which Karpov emphatically won. Viktor was in terrible form. But the point was that Viktor was number 2 player in the world. I had no idea that post-tournament he was going to invite me to be a second. I'm just like, I'm in awe of the guy, you know, like to begin with. And I really could not prepare because what had happened is I had come from Hastings, where anybody who's ever played in Hastings carried with them a cold back home. So I'm like, you know, my head is stuffed. I'm swallowing aspirin, steam baths, and my preparation was, you know, just trying to get to the board without embarrassing myself by blowing all over the place. As luck would have it, and I mean to emphasize this, Viktor did me the biggest solid ever. There was one opening. I mean, one opening, one specific variation I knew. Inside out, backwards, forwards, left to right. He walked right into it. I mean, it couldn't have been any better. And Viktor, I mean, I have mercilessly killed dozens of players in Swiss tournaments in this position. Dozens. The guy's gone. He's toast. I don't care if he's number 2 player in the world, a world champion, or future world champion. He's toast. You can't play this position. Viktor goes into a 45-minute thing and comes up with a concept that I never even considered, having spent hundreds of hours on this particular position. It was extraordinary. I was just like flabbergasted that somebody, how inventive, how creative he was to find, and he almost escaped. That 45 minutes proved costly. He got into severe time pressure later in the game. I went bang, 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 and I won. But, you know, I want to emphasize that playing against Viktor wasn't a challenge. It was an honor. It was just like, holy smokes, I get to play Viktor Korchnoi. I mean, please, don't embarrass myself. You know, like, let me play a good game. Let him win a good game. Let me make a draw. Let me win a good game. But I just want to play a good game. I just don't. And it turned out that I played like one of the best games of my life. And that particular tournament, which was really, really amazing. Something else that will never, ever, ever, ever happen again to any other Grandmaster happened to me in that tournament. I scored 10.5 out of 13. It was Viktor. It was the Masters group. It's one of the best scores you could get. The Grandmaster norm was something like 7.5. So I was like 3 points above the Grandmaster
very
norm.
Nice.
Yeah. Somewhere around round 9, top grandmaster from Iceland, Grandmaster Sigurjónsson, resigned the game, and I clinched my 3rd and final grandmaster norm. Nice.
Yeah.
Exactly at the moment, there was a gong. PA system, public announcement, comes on. Please, everybody, please stop your clocks. Please, everybody, just stop your clocks, stop your clocks. Like, what the hell is that, right? Right in the middle of a round, like, this is crazy. Korchnoi's playing, Timon's playing, all of these top guys are playing. Please, everybody, stop your clocks. 2 ladies come on stage with these silver trays, bottles of champagne, and flutes of champagne for all of the people on stage. Please, everybody, could you please stand? We would like to salute Grandmaster Yasser Seirawan, who, thanks to his victory today, has made his 3rd and final, and they don't call it norm, they called it ball. They've made his 3rd and final ball and will be made a grandmaster at the next Congress. Please, everybody, give a salute. Everybody on stage. Viktor Korchnoi, in the middle of the game, please have a champagne. Can you imagine? This is crazy, right? Yeah. What's even crazier? One of the amateur players in the lower section, his opponent had fiddled and made a touch move and didn't make the move with the touch piece.
That's outrageous.
Outrageous. That man got up and went to the chief arbiter to complain about the bad behavior of his opponent not making the touch move, and he happened to be on stage when he got a glass of champagne. He just happened to be complaining about that guy was my future father-in-law.
Wow.
Jan Nagel. And I said, well, ever since we met, you've been on my account. You can't make this stuff up.
You can't make up this story.
It's great.
It's great.
It's just great. And I married his daughter. Yvette is my wife.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just fantastic. And I'm kind of like interested in the fact that Korchnoi is known to be not so gracious when he loses.
No.
Like, how did he act when he lost against you? How that turned into sort of a friendship, kind of?
Exactly. So Denis, you're absolutely right. Like, the absolute worst thing that could happen to a grandmaster is to lose the game.
Yeah.
That's not the worst thing. There's one thing even worse than that, and that's losing to a junior player. Okay, Viktor was a very, very strong believer in beating them while they were young, because the young grow up to be monsters. So you better get a plus score against them now, because it's going to be harder later. So there I was. I just beat Viktor Korchnoi, and I'm this junior, and Viktor's just so disgusted. He's like, signs the score sheet. He wants to tear away, go to his room, and like tear the furniture out of the room. He's furious. And I, with my popcorn smile, said, Mr. Korchnoi, would you like to analyze the game?
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll tell you exactly what was going through Viktor's mind. So like Viktor's like, he's thinking. If he goes back to his room, he may seriously damage the room. Certainly he's going to damage his hand from hitting the wall. There's no question about that. He'll be upset. Instead, he can play the role of a masochist and torture himself more. We could analyze together, and then he would learn how really incredibly stupid he was, and how could he have lost to this retard idiot junior player. So there's a bit of a masochistic streak as well as a sadistic streak in every chess player. You have to have those two things. Okay, let's analyze. So Viktor comes and he gets to his terrible position where he played this incredible move, bishop c5. what an idiot. I should have played the normal move. Bang, 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 you lose. That was what I was afraid of. You reminded me. Yeah, I saw this variation. That's why I didn't play it. Okay. Well, later in the game, I should have played this. No. Boom, 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 boom. You lose. Now, Viktor, this happens like 5 times in a row. Like where the alternative he had would have accelerated his defeat. No, Mr. Korchnoi, it was like at move 26 when you played this move, rook b8. This was your best chance. You had to go into this much worse ending. Bang, 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 bang. Because what you played ended up here. Viktor walked out of the room wondering, what the hell just happened? Like, he didn't understand. He genuinely didn't understand that my familiarity was so great for that particular position that it went into endgame positions. Like, my understanding, if you had given me any other type of position, I would have been the idiotic retard that, like, how dare I meet him, right? But that just happened to be my position. So Viktor was like, kind of he went out and had a nice dinner, as he told me later, that he would never have gone out for dinner. He didn't deserve dinner, but then he deserved. Then he would come to me during the game and he'd say, look the game to him. What do you think? Who stands better? And I would tell him. And he was testing me to be a trainer to him. And I didn't know that, of course. Of course I did. I just, hey, yeah, man, that was a cool move. Look at that move. Later, after the tournament was over, he said, Yasser, I'd like to ask you to be my trainer, my second. And what was going through my mind exactly at that moment is, could I afford it? How much do I have to pay Viktor to train with him? I'm making the mental calculations. Can I afford it? And I didn't answer. And Viktor misunderstood my silence. And he said, oh, yeah. Well, I pay all your travel, your hotel costs, your meals, and 500 Swiss francs a week. It finally registers on me that he's going to pay me to work and train with him.
Was it
my hand came out of nowhere, man. Oh, I was so delighted. And you know the story, of course, with Viktor, the first night at his home. You know that? Yeah. You gotta shoot the guy in the wrong room. That was me. I was in the master bedroom.
He paid you.
Yeah, man. It was good value. What other questions?
Yeah. So the other question, it was sort of a statement. They really loved your book, Winning Strategies.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
One of their favorites, and they think it's one of the best.
Thank you.
And talking about books, so there is one part that is my question, and I do want to touch upon that book in front of you.
Kingwalks.
Kingwalks.
Hot off the press, everybody.
But before we do, I do want to just talk a little bit about this discrepancy. It's not a real discrepancy, but it kind of irked me. You have your book on Fischer. You've got the...
No regrets.
Yeah, the Fischer book. You've got the other book, and I was wondering,
Five Crowns?
5
Crowns. That was my first book. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm mostly referring to the books that you were reading as coming up as a player.
Right.
And none of them really says, "Oh, play the English opening. That's the one you should be playing." So I'm wondering. You read all these books from Fischer, and suddenly you play the English. How did that came for you?
That was really easy. Okay, so essentially, there are two main openings for white. E2, E4 or E4 and D2, D4. And these are two enormous branches. In fact, there are volumes of the Encyclopedia Chess opening that are devoted to E4 games and to D4 games. And quite frankly, the amount of work that is required to play E4 was greater than anything I could do. I mean, at the time, I kind of had a I'm not going to say an agreement, but a very, very clear understanding from my parents, which was very simple. Yasser, we will support you playing chess. We will support you going to these weekend events where sometimes you have to leave school on a Friday or skip a Monday. We're going to support you with your entry fees and your purchase of books. We're going to do all of that. But you are going to score very, very well on your academic tests. You are going to go to the university. We've got this education fund for you. This is happening. So if chess interferes at all with your schoolwork, you can kiss it goodbye. There will be no chess.
Okay.
So my schoolwork, as I briefly mentioned, I did graduate a year early, which required me to take summer courses and get these extra credits in school. I went to Garfield High School, a public high school in Seattle, Washington. And, I was taking the hardest courses I could because it was necessary to get college credits for my high school.
Yeah.
And whatever Garfield offered in terms of college credits that I could use at the university, man, I went for them, and they were pretty demanding. Yeah, they were very demanding, especially the chemistry classes. Anyway, the bottom line is, I actually had to work hard at school, and I was like a 4-point. I was like, I had a good, I was a good student.
Good grades, yeah.
For a very specific reason. I wanted to make my parents happy, which made me able to say, yeah, I'll play in that event. And in fact, one event I couldn't, and I remember it to this day, and it really was very sad. It was a Vancouver Open, 1975, Vancouver, British Columbia, the Open. Friends and I drove from Seattle across the border of Canada to BC, spent the night, and drove back. At that tournament, I watched a Grandmaster Paul Carrez like a hawk from the outside, and I watched how he moved the piece in a very gentlemanly manner and always put the piece directly on the center of the square. And I went home to practice, because even if I couldn't make moves that were as good as Paul's, I could play them in the same manner and not to disturb the opponent at all. I wanted to play in the tournament. I couldn't, because it was one of those 9-day events where it was one game a day, blah, 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 2 weekends. I'd have to miss too much of schoolwork or something like that. So I had to put in a lot of time on the schoolwork. Then it was just playing chess. I mean, these tournaments, 5 rounds on the weekends and what have you. I couldn't spend 1,000 hours analyzing one E4. I couldn't spend 1,000 hours analyzing one D4. I had to play a side variation. And the English was a marvelous side variation, because the transpositions, if we want to transpose into a Grunfeld, I could choose it. If we wanted to transpose into a King's Indian, I could choose the transposition. I played the English to transpose to positions that I wanted to play, and I played the English also to keep the English flavor. Like, what is the Flora McKenna's variation? C4, knight f6, knight c3, e6.
6 and then E4.
That's a very, very English position. You don't get that out of anything else. And so I did my best to specialize in those things. That's what Viktor fell for, by the way. There was that Flora McKenna's variation. So that was why the English became my repertoire, or part of my. And unfortunately, I really mean to say this, and it's a very, very sad thing that I have to say, is when I was playing chess, professionally, I really wasn't, in the sense that chess didn't support professional grandmasters from the West. Bent Larson, you think to yourself, oh, Bent Larson, he's a great professional, big player, Big Bent.
Yeah.
No. Most of his income came from his columns. He wrote for newspapers, he wrote books, because the prize monies were so bad. I remember very, very vividly, he lost a semi-final against Boris Spassky, candidates, and he got 250 Swedish crowns, which is like $100.
Wow.
And it was like a 3-week match, adjournments, all kinds of costs, and that was his prize. Like what?
Yeah.
So it was like these Soviet grandmasters were professionals. You know, they had government support, state support. You think of Sammy Reshevsky, really one of the great American giants of chess. No. Sammy was a CPA, a certified public accountant. His professional job was accounting. Reuben Fine, another great American player, world's top 10 player, he gave up chess to become a psychiatrist, and so forth and so on. I'm just saying that Bobby Fischer tried desperately hard to be a professional player, and he was very often skirting on the edges of destitution.
So there are a couple of more things that
Please.
I want to. So we had a question, and then I'd like to talk about that book in front of you.
Yeah.
But before that, there was a question asked by chat asking if you'd see someone do commentary from the crop who you're seeing in the chess world, who would it be?
The commentators. Yeah. Well, actually, I'm very, very pleased to say that I think there's some really marvelous presenters in the world of chess. A lot of times chess is a solitary game. It really doesn't lend itself over easily to being a presenter. On the Magnus Carlsen tour, I was stunned. I worked with Tanya Sachev and Peter Leko.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe what a great commentator Peter Leko was.
Oh,
I was
fabulous.
just amazed. Peter's fiddler is remarkable, but I have to say that for Peter's fiddler, he's talking to me. Unfortunately, he's not talking for an audience. He's not trying. He's just blitzing through tons of variations, and I'm just sitting there in awe, like, well done, well done, well done. I really enjoyed the streamers. I think, for example, I mean, it's not everybody's taste. Maybe you're an acquired taste. I think Ben Feingold's hilarious. I really enjoy it. Eric Hansen for me, the Chess Bros. I just like. I mean, I mean, just thinking about it makes me makes me laugh. We're really, really blessed. Amazingly, in the world of chess, which is really, really sad, and it's been that way from my early days, it's really a male-dominated sport. I mean, literally, at the American Chess Service in Seattle, the chess club that I was raised up in Seattle, there was no women players, not a single one, not a single member. Now I look at the presenters, the streamers, whether it be Jennifer Shahadi, Alexandra Brotez, Anna Rudolph, Tanya. They're wonderful. They're wonderful. I love Jovi Yovanka. It was really funny. Jovi comes in to Studio A here in St. Louis, and she's immaculate. She's well dressed. She's preen. She's got her little script. She's got it all set. She's going, welcome everybody. She's got this wonderful British accent. You know, welcome everybody. And so now there's a little anyway, doesn't matter. She's going to do her presentation, and my co-host Yasser Seirawan, Yasser, thank you for being with us. She's expecting me to say something like, yes, thank you, Jovi. It's nice to be with you too. Instead, I say something to the effect of like, Jovi, yesterday you were wonderful. I have 3 words for you: fabulous. Freezes her, right? So she's thinking about these 3 words, fabulous, and her script, she forgot. I mean, it's like she got thrown completely off. It was wonderful. And I just wanted to say that in the world of chess, what's really remarkable is we do have some really great presenters. And all of the names that I just said, I would be very, very happy to work with. Jennifer Shahade, of course, has been my right arm.
Yeah, it's
a lot of people
the trio.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know this, but very close friends with her father, Iron Mike, because he did the Iron Mike triathlon. Iron Mike Shahade, he's a master from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and many-time champion of Pennsylvania. And we go way back. And one time I was doing a video series, Pro Chess, in Philadelphia, and I babysat Greg Shahade, the older brother of Jen.
That's why he doesn't play the Scandinavian.
Very good. I mean, I'm sure there was a connection. But okay, yeah, so it's remarkable for me when I think that I would end up doing commentaries alongside Jennifer. Yeah. It's really, really nice. In truth, I haven't had a bad experience except for one.
Okay, we'll keep that secret.
No, I want to share it.
You want to share?
Oh yeah, because it was hilariously funny.
All right.
So what happened was there was Viktor. I'm doing my commentary, and there was a game between Jobova, who's crushing Ivanchuk. Jobova just crushing him. And slowly, Ivanchuk somehow slipping and sliding. You know, Jobova is losing his grip, and finally they get into a rook ending. It's a draw. So, what a great save by Ivanchuk. Yes. Then Jobova makes the offer of a trade of rooks to go into a king and pawn endgame, which is like really, really, really shocking, because that king on pawn endgame, you could be burning your bridges, you could be losing. He was slightly better in the rook ending. To go into a king and pawn endgame, well, is there a win? So I'm sitting there trying to figure out the win for Jobova. Why else would he go into this king pawn endgame when Ivanchuk has captured the rook and Jobova resigned? Well, that's stupid.
Yeah.
You don't resign. Did he lose on time? No, there's plenty of time. He resigned. No! You recapture the rook, and the guy will show you why he's going to beat you. So I'm trying to figure out, first of all, why he resigned, and where was the win, and in walks Vasil. Vasil Ivanchuk. Chuckmeister, come and sit down. How is it? How you doing? How you feeling? Good? Very good. Won't you show the people the game? And he's like a dolphin. I mean, he's just, everything meticulous. It flows. And thank you, goodbye. Oh. Not for me. Not for me. Of course, not for me, Vasil, but for the audience. Only that. For the glorious audience. Could you please explain to them why your opponent resigned? Tuck, 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 tuck. 12 moves. Bridesmaids too far apart. White loses. Oh, thank you, thank you. Any good grandmaster would have found it instantly. Any good grandmaster. So he leaves. For the audience, just a second, I got to take the sword out of my belly. We're going to be on a break. And like this. My dear friend, Ivan Sokolov, is in stitches. He's laughing. He's watching the broadcast from his apartment in the Viktor down the road. He's laughing. Next day, he goes to breakfast. A little cheese, a little ham, a little bread. And Grandmaster Ivan Saric, who's like a 2,700 Grandmaster, comes next to Ivan. And Ivan, why did Jobova resign yesterday? And he goes, "Brrrr," the whole line. Any good grandmaster would have found it right away. So it had a ripple.
Ripple effect right there.
In the world of chess. Any good grandmaster. So, sometimes being a commentator, like
it's a tricky
risk.
job.
It's a dirty job. It's a dirty job.
Thank you so much. And before we go, tell me a bit more about the Kingwalks.
Kingwalks. Okay. So I have a very dear friend, Bruce Harper. Bruce, he lives up in British Columbia. They were like these Canadian raiders that used to come down. Peter Biasas, Duncan Settles, Bruce Harper, Robert Zook, Jonathan Berry, Seth Taylor, Nigel Fulbrook, Mad Dog. Nigel Fulbrook, they'd all come down and they'd raid the South. They'd raid us in Seattle and in Portland. And I became very close friends of Bruce. Bruce went on he had a very strange relationship. He became a prosecutor for the Crown, an attorney for the Crown of British Columbia, whereas his wife, Robin, became a defense attorney. So there's these two power couple that clashes. Anyway, Bruce is a wonderful writer. He's about a 2400 master. Together, we created S-Chess, Seirawan Chess.
Yeah.
He was the inventor alongside of me with the Hawks and Elephants. Ages ago, I don't even want to say how long ago because it's a bit embarrassing. I'm going to guess 7 years ago. He said, "Yeah, sir, I've got this great idea for a project, Kingwalks, where a player voluntarily walks their king across the board for a very specific strategic purpose. So, for example, your king might be on the king side, and you might want to launch a pawn attack. G4, H4, G5,
Let's
H5.
go English attacking,
Yeah.
sort of.
But your king's there. So you would escort your king and tuck it away over the queen side so you could go do. And there's some really, really marvelous games. Unfortunately, in my case, I played a lot of Kingwalks. Not all of them are very, very successful. And, there are those suicide marches.
Yeah.
And we had so much fun writing the book, we forgot that we would ever
Can you
publish
show it
it.
again?
Yeah,
To
a Kingwalks.
everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a real nice compilation of lots of
Kingwalks
very
everywhere.
instructive Kingwalks. Exactly. And I mean, a lot of people forget. You remember the Nigel Short Kingwalk?
Yes,
to
the classic.
That's classic.
Yeah.
But a lot of people forget the Nigel Short Kingwalk in his game with Alexander Belyavsky. In that game, he was playing in the Linares. He has a much better position. His king, I think, goes somewhere from, say, G2 to C6, where Belyavsky gives him checkmate.
Whoa.
Like, it's not like he goes king C6, anticipating some reaction, and his opponent goes mate. So while he's celebrated for the Timon march, people forget the suicide march. And there's some really, really funny things. So literally, with the pandemic raging, Bruce is like, "Yes, you're not going to believe this, but I think after 7 years we finished the book." It's like, what? Really? I mean, it finally happened. Yeah. So somehow during the pandemic, and we got together with our friend Hannon Russell Enterprises, because unfortunately, the really sad truth is that book publishers today, it's openings, man. They don't want the 60 memorable games. They don't want, the David Bronstein's, Theory and Practice, tournament books, I mean to say. They don't want the book collection. So this is a collection of Kingwalks. And Hannon said, sure, let's have some fun with it. Because he actually laughed and fell in love with the book too. So that's how it got published.
Yeah, it's a great book. And I do advise everyone to get it.
Thank you. And thank you. By the way, a big thanks to all the supporters. And again, I think it was the Queen's Gambit impact, the effect, that my books in particular just had an enormous year because so many people discovered chess through the Queen's Gambit, and they started, and my Chessable courses. So it's the weirdest thing that during the pandemic that chess
just
went like
skyrocketed.
And as an author, I'm like really, really grateful. So big thank you for all of the people. And regarding the no regrets, I think eventually we'll have to get it reprinted.
Well, I want to thank you for being here, and
my pleasure, Dennis.
it was just an amazing time. Thank you for all the stories.
Not at all.
Especially the
Pleasure to share.
Korchnoi ones. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Cool.
This has been a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club.